Hello everyone, it's me, Anita, again, and today I wanted to talk about um, um, acceptance of being transgender, of being a woman in a man's body. And I've wanted to do a video on acceptance before, but this one is really going to deal a lot more with something that's going on right at the moment in my life. Um, and so this will be part one. I'll do something else a little bit later to talk about acceptance from a more general perspective. But I wanted to talk about um, a particular part of acceptance that has to do with struggling with wanting to maintain some of the maleness, if you will, because it's useful. It makes life easier. And in particular, this has grown out of a conversation I had with my therapist, actually in our little therapy session before last. She had made a statement to me right at the end of the therapy session saying that she thought that I was still holding on to part of the male shell, that I wasn't. And, and I'll talk about the impact of doing that a little bit later in this video. But that was one piece of it that got me started thinking about this. And then the second piece was there's a video, and I'll try to link it below, from Reverend Dr. Paula Jones, in which she talks about not being able to outlive her male privilege. And that made me start thinking about male privilege with the male shell and wanting to hold on to that sense of male privilege. And in some ways, almost habitually holding on to that sense of male privilege. Because, well, first of all, nice to have privilege. There is an attitude that I think men get because the privilege has been granted them, that somehow they can talk about serious matters, that they can think analytically in a certain way, and that they're sort of associated with intellectual pursuits and with rational thought, if you will. And so that privilege then brings a certain, that's granted to them by the culture, that gives a certain attitude, that there's a certain expectation that you get. You expect that when you say something, people are going to take you seriously. They may disagree with you, but they're not going to sort of blow you off and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a woman. You don't know. And when I grew up especially, women were treated much more with deferral. You don't know what you're talking about. You've never been out in the real world. You've never had to work for a living. You've never had to whatever. And I heard this a lot in arguments between my mother and my father, where my mother would provide ideas to my dad. There would be disagreement with what he was saying, and instead of considering her ideas, they would just be immediately rejected as being nonsensical, unrealistic, uninformed, and in a lot of ways, my mother read and was much better informed than my dad was. And so, as a young woman growing up in a male body and being treated as a male and getting the male privilege given to me, that ended up being part of my own internal struggles. I could see what was happening to my mother. I could see what was happening to my sister. I could see what was happening to other women in the environment. But I could escape that, and I did. And it was because, well, it was nice. All of a sudden people are taking you seriously. But at the same time that I was doing that, I'm also taking into my mind, or my experience, my set of biases, whatever, that women weren't to be treated, weren't to be taken seriously. And while I would not ultimately buy into that, because growing up, there was a women's lib movement. There was a lot of awakening of the intelligence, recognition of the intelligence of women, recognition that they had strengths that were complementary to male strengths, that they were different, but they're equally strong and equally respected, or respectable, and should be equally respected and desired. And so but I got that from more of a male perspective. It was more of a, oh, well, I took that on and I made it part of the male shell. And so I kind of was an enlightened male, if you will. And um, so it's, sorry, runny noise. Um, but it also got used internally as part of this transphobia that I've talked about in another video, the internalized transphobia. And the internalized transphobia then would come and would basically undermine any sense of um, achievement intellectually that I had. It raised questions all the time about my ability to do things. Even though I had ample evidence of my abilities, there was still this undermining that was going on. And so that's all sort of developed into this pattern that gets them played out today. And so as I move towards fully embracing myself as a woman and really seeing myself as a woman, experiencing myself as a woman, even though the body's wrong, what happens is that by trying to hold on to that male privilege, that sense of I deserve to be heard, even though now it is socially acceptable for a woman, that my statement of I demand to be heard, or I expect to be heard, I expect to be taken seriously, I expect to be to have some sense of power in a situation, in any social situation. I don't expect to be completely vulnerable. I don't expect to be put down or have people say belittling things to me. That trying to hold on to that actually brings the transphobia, the internalized transphobia with it. And so what happens is that as I start moving into that mindset, the internalized transphobia comes, and I find that it starts undermining my identity as who I am. And so that's the difficult thing that I'm dealing with right at the moment. That's the sort of society has changed, but in many ways, I as a woman, because I grew up hidden, because I grew up behind the male facade, that I as a woman have not progressed. I still, in some ways, have the internalized attitudes as a woman of what the expectations were from society in the 1950s in West Texas. And so this is not, oh, this is terrible. It's a statement of fact. It is. But I thought it was important to sort of talk about this. It's in real time. I'm still working through it. I don't know quite how I'm going to resolve all this. But I wanted to sort of bring this up just as the issue, as an example of the difficulty in getting to a sense of acceptance. That there are a lot of very subtle little, I don't know if gotchas is the right word, but there are issues that throw you back away from who you really are into this male facade. I think this is probably something that is more pertinent to older transgender people like myself than it is to younger ones. I don't know about that. Maybe it has more to do with the fact that I didn't even contemplate the fact that I was transgender until so late in life, until I was in my mid-60s. So, again, you've got one data point, or I've got one data point. It's myself. But I thought it was important to put this out there and to talk about it and help people understand. And it sort of falls in with the confusion from the last video of getting an insight into how slippery this all is, and how much working on acceptance is a very, very difficult, getting to fully accepting is a very, very difficult task, even in its own right. And that will actually, I want to do a video on Am I Delusional? It's been percolating around in my head for a few weeks now because of a comment that a judicial nominee made about transgender people being delusional. But I think it was important to do before that one, because I think this one, along with that one, will help you to help address the idea of why I don't think this is a delusion. It's reality. It's something very difficult to deal with, and it is, frankly, enlightening in many ways about how things work within the development of personality, the development of identity, the development of the sense of gender. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that this is helpful to you. Please subscribe. You can click on, I think, where is it going to be? It's probably going to be over here, the beautiful picture of me. And you can subscribe that way. If you click on the little alarm bell, it'll tell you when I update, because I don't update on a regular basis. But thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate the people who take time and watch these videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye.